architect of record, and I live at 1258 Windward Lane in Kent.
Thank you, sir.
I'd just like to expand upon what was already said in that the land has been rezoned. The drawings that have been submitted are preliminary, and we will abide by all of the engineering requirements that the city will put forth. So the engineered drawings, if it is approved, we will do engineered drawings to meet all the requirements of landscaping, setbacks, paving, retention, and all those things. So that will all be done upon approval.
Perfect, thank you. There's 5 conditions here. Very good.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 43 Pruitt Boulevard? Anyone here wishing to speak in favor? Okay, very good. Anyone wishing to speak against the conditional use request at 43 Pruitt Boulevard? Anyone here wishing to speak against? Anyone against? Very good. We'll close the public hearing and open up to the committee if there's any questions or comments. I do see here Mr. Antonucci, and we did hear the engineer architect on record here basically say that more than happy to agree to the 5 conditions within this conditional use request. You've had those discussions, Mr. Antonucci?
Yes.
Yeah, and they're good with that.
Yes.
We just heard that. Very good. Further questions, Ms. Mobian?
Based on what I'm seeing, Mr. Antonucci, it looks like everything here has to do with landscaping and stormwater management and getting permits and all of that. So although there are 5 conditions, they're pretty much around those areas, fencing and all those kinds of things.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Mr. Swirsky?
Are there any residents adjacent to this area? It's hard for me to, I don't know.
Not adjacent, across the street.
Across the-
Yeah,
across
there are
from
homes
each-
across Easton
from
Drive.
Pruitt?
Yes. Mhm. So within that area between the parking area and the street will be heavily landscaped and fenced. There'll be a vinyl fence in the front of that property, so the cars won't be visible to those residences.
Okay, and they were notified?
They were notified, yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did get a chance to go out there and take a look at that, and I spoke with the councilman in that area. I understand Mr. Swartz's concerns, but actually, when this is done, it'll actually make that seamless in that area. If you look at the other side, there's nothing but commercial on that other side.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Hearing none from any council representatives. Any questions or comments? Very good. Hearing none. We'll now move on to the second item that's up for a public hearing. However, though, I'd like to invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock. We'll have an additional public hearing. We're going to ask that you be sworn in, and then the committee will make a recommendation to all of council. Thank you. Thanks. Item number 2 is up for public hearing. This is authorizing conditional use to establish a child daycare business center at 1335 West Waterloo Road. Mr. Antonucci.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Marian Anderson is requesting permission to establish a child daycare business center at this location. The proposed daycare center, also known as Just Like Home, would be located on the main floor of the 1,282 square foot ranch-style house. The facility would provide services and activities for up to 12 children ranging from infants to 13 years of age. The hours of operation would be Monday through Friday from 7 to 6 and on weekends from 9 to 6. Petitioner currently has 2 employees on an as-needed basis and plans on hiring an additional 2. The daycare will be utilizing space on the first floor as well as an enclosed play space in the backyard. State of Ohio child care rules further stipulate that any approved provider with 7 to 12 children is now considered to be a Type A home provider, while the City of Akron requires conditional use approval for 10 or more kids. Petitioner has been providing daycare services for 15 years. The proposed use should not be intrusive to the neighborhood, as the site is currently used as a Type B daycare home, and the majority of the activities are conducted indoors. Since the children are dropped off and picked up at varying times of the day, traffic congestion should not be an issue. The zoning staff has not received any complaints about the current daycare home. Providing quality daycare services is beneficial to the entire city, and as such, the planning staff supports the request. Both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 1335 West Waterloo Road for a child daycare business. If you can please come forward and provide for us your name and address. And if you'd like to make any comments, we welcome them.
My name is Lawrence Anderson. Marion is my wife.
Sir, can you pull that microphone a little closer? There you go.
Okay, last time we was here, a guy brought up lawn service. Well, I like to make it clear that once or sometimes twice a week, I goes out and cut my brother's lawn, which is a pretty good size. I cut my two neighbors next door to me, and sometimes somebody else might ask me to cut their yards. I do not have a lawn service that I'm out there every day cutting lawns. As for me blocking the alley, I'm probably 18 inches of my car sticking out into the street. And that's about all. And I'm there for 10 or 15 minutes and nothing no more. I don't block the alley for a long time. I don't know where this guy got this from, but he's saying that I'm blocking the alley. I'm not blocking the alley. Up the street from me, they blocked the alley up. I have seen it blocked for at least an hour almost. But that's all right, because I can go out on the other end. Up there where he live at, he's about 200 yards from the other entrance. But when he sees me pull up with my trailer, he deliberately comes down there to make me move. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he has a problem. If he has a problem with me, and he need to come and knock on my door, and we can talk about it like man to man and solve the problem. He says that I have a bunch of junk down there. Okay, up the street there's automobile tires, trash, a lot of stuff, and it's almost in his back door. I haven't heard him say anything about any of that. Like I said, we try to get along with our neighbors. We have had problems out of some of our neighbors in the past, and like I said, even if they just like us or whatever, if they ever need help, call on me, I'll help them. I'm not a person that holds grudges. If this guy needed help, and he come and asked me today, I'd go help him. My wife, as for the daycare, I'm the second person that helps her. Well, like I said, we've been doing this for a long time. My mother, my sisters and brothers, all of us, I'm originally from Virginia. Most of the senior citizens and kids came to our house when they was ill, and we took care of the kids through the welfare department in Virginia. We've been doing this even ever since I've been in Virginia and since I've been in Ohio. I took care of all my nieces and nephews, and if any child has a problem and need my help, I'd be more than glad to help him. And that's about all I had to say about it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marion Anderson, and I live at 1335 West Waterloo Road. As my husband said, we've been running this daycare for over 15 years. We haven't had any problems or issues with anything going on. This is something I love doing, we both love doing. As I said, we're just trying to accommodate more families at time slots, different time slots. That's what I'm having a problem with. And I'm looking forward to be able to do that, because there's a lot of families that I've had to turn down because of that. And basically, the parents will be picking up and dropping off in the front of Waterloo Road. It's semi-busy street, but I haven't had any issues. They pull right up in front. I have also on the side too. I have enough room where they can pull up on the side and drop off and pick up too. So there's no issue with that. In the driveway also. Me and my husband, the back, we tarred the back because when we first got into doing this daycare so that we could park our cars back there. So basically, we took out some of the grass back there, but we have a fence around where the daycare is at. So, you know, we have enough room where we can park our cars in the back and where they can pick up and drop off, as I explained. But basically, we're basically trying to operate, accommodate more families.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll ask if there's anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request on West Waterloo. Anyone else in favor? Okay, anyone wishing to speak against the conditional use request at 1335 West Waterloo? Anyone against? Very good. Hearing none, we'll now open it up to the committee if there's any questions or comments. Ms. Amobian?
I believe I was here for the Planning Commission meeting that morning, and I heard the neighbor, the person on the street speak. I don't know if he submitted anything to the Planning Commission as a complaint, but I know that the Planning Commission did not take any action on that complaint or concern.
Well, what they did do was recommend a condition essentially that there not be vehicles blocking that alley, and that actually is a condition on this ordinance.
Okay.
So it sounds like Mr. Anderson's going to be able to comply with that.
Okay, good. I just want to go on record, and I will continue to go on record until we correct this, that, and I know based on what Mr. Segedy mentioned to me at that planning, mentioned to the Planning Commission members, that we are planning to address this. Again, this is not an area that we have any authority over. The state manages this program. The state has given these providers authorization to increase their numbers from 9 to 12. We should stop taking citizens through this process, and we should stop charging them this permit fee for coming down here to do this. It doesn't appear that there's a problem, and based on what these providers have indicated, that they've been in business for 15 years, and obviously either there have been complaints, and if there have been, we wouldn't have been the entity to address those. It would have been a state issue. And I'm assuming that they are operating with the necessary licenses and credentials they need to operate with, otherwise they wouldn't be in business. So I want to go on record clearly stating that we need to address this as soon as possible, so we can stop taking these people through this process. Thank you very much.
Mr. Swirsky?
Yeah, I want to thank the Andersons for filling an important community need, and also I just want to make sure I understand. There was some citizen input, and it was addressed and incorporated into the plan. Is that correct? So can you see that the citizen input, the opportunity for neighbor input was also valuable or invaluable?
Well, I could start. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of how this process works, is when things first come to Planning Commission, neighbors have an opportunity to raise any concerns, and that concern about blockage of the alley was raised, and as Mr. Antonucci said, that was addressed as a condition. But I think the fact that, at least at this hearing this afternoon, the neighbors aren't here, I think I would surmise from that that they're satisfied with that resolution of this, but I guess we'll see if anyone comes at 7 o'clock tonight.
Right, but you see that the neighbor input was actually helpful to the process.
Yes.
Anyone else on the committee? Mr. Kamer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say my opinion is I like this process as a ward council person. I believe this process should be coming before the planning committee, and it should involve the neighbors in the neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kamer. Any other comments? Ms. Amobian?
The process that we are going through is conditional use for the providers to increase their numbers not to handle any citizens' complaints, which could come to us in many different forms. We are here strictly for this process to increase the numbers, and there's no role for us to play in this. This is unnecessary. We shouldn't be charging people $100 to come down here for this. We shouldn't have them come down here spending their time doing this when this is a state process. So we can talk about all of the frivolous or the other things that come about as a result of this, but there are many different ways that those complaints could be addressed if they were truly complaints that hampered the visibility, the passage, or anything like that for the citizens on that street. This process we're going through is conditional use to establish a child daycare business. And since they've been in business for 15 years, we're talking about increasing the number of children. That's what this process is about, folks. It is not here to address those complaints. Thank you very much.
Further questions? Very good. We'll invite you back this evening. Okay, 7 o'clock, we'll have an additional public hearing, after which the committee will then make a recommendation to all of council. Thanks. Number 3, authorizing conditional use to establish a daycare business at 480 Levers Lane.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Demetra McCall is requesting permission to establish a child daycare business center at this location. The proposed daycare center, also known as Small Giggles, would occupy portions of the main floor of the 960 square foot ranch dwelling. The facility would provide services and activities for up to 12 kids, ranging from infants to 13 years of age. Petitioner currently has 1 assistant and would add 2 more assistants if approved. Due to the needs and work schedules of parents, child care services would be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The enclosed rear yard contains an outdoor play area. Petitioner has stated that she has operated a Type B home at this property for the past 14 years. She now wishes to obtain a state license to be approved to operate as a Type A home, which permits up to 12 children. Since the children are typically dropped off or picked up at varying hours, traffic congestion should not be an issue. The zoning staff has not received any complaints about the current daycare home. Providing quality daycare services is beneficial to the entire city, and the planning staff supports the request, recommends approval subject to the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 480 Levers Lane? Anyone in favor? Anyone? Very good. Is there anyone here wishing to speak against the proposed child daycare business at 480 Levers Lane? Anyone against? Anyone here speaking against? Very good. We'll close the public hearing and open it up to questions from the committee. Questions or comments? I see Ms. Amobian's ready for a question.
I don't have a question. I'd just like my previous comments to apply to this as well. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Amobian made some good points since this is the second one to come. When this legislation comes in, what is our cost? Do we send somebody out to inspect?
Yeah, we go out and review it. We take a look at the property and get plans and talk to the petitioners and formulate our recommendation that way.
Because in the normal process, do we have anything to do with the annual or whenever their inspections are of these businesses? Do we have anything to do with that?
Generally, it's subject to annual renewal for 3 years. It's something that we would take to the Planning Commission if there were issues, and then there's a process that way. Okay. But it doesn't immediately come to council. Now, if it's a big problem, then we could take it through council could revoke a conditional use. That's a process, but we would first report to Planning Commission.
Because if it's a new business, they would have to fill out these automatically. If it's an established business and there's already a renewal process, something like this possibly could be, if they're in good standing, save us money. I don't know what what our actual costs are, sending someone out there to do and everything. I don't know if that $100 covers that. or whatnot, and if it doesn't, then it really doesn't make us any sense in doing this. And for most of these businesses, the fees, if they can be saved, it would be in a good interest. Just something to think about. Again, I don't know what our actual costs are when we do each one of these. I mean, we're going to be here already, but I don't know how much cost your staff or someone's staff has to do in filing all this paperwork. I understand the concerns, but if there's already a process in place to look at this, maybe we could, again, if the business is already in good standing, the state's already approved this, let it go and review it. That's just my comments, just from a practical business sense.
Okay, very good. Mr. Segedy?
Yeah, I was going to just clarify too. I mean, yeah, there's staff time devoted to processing these, of course. What I had mentioned at Planning Commission was just, it is in council's purview to decide how to handle these, if it's the pleasure of council to amend the zoning code, to change these requirements, that can be done. I mean, my recommendation for the record would be that we do think about that, and that, perhaps this could go through BZA or another body, but it's really, it's up to this committee and to the remainder of council to decide that.
I personally will stand up and say that a ward council person in this committee has always kind of yielded to that, to the sentiments typically of the ward council person, the majority, the supermajority of the time, and that they have a better ear in terms of what's going on within a neighborhood area. We have changed a couple of these. We've amended them over the years. The licensing procedure through the state of Ohio is probably just that, a licensing procedure to ensure that certain criteria is met. But in terms of zoning, zoning is zoning. It's not a licensure. It's a zoning, and it has everything to do with land use. and we are able to control our destiny in terms of our neighborhoods whenever we go out and we look at these properties and see if it's, if it's safe, if there's, recommendations that can be made, or additions to the conditional use or additional requirement, just as there was in this last one, in terms of the one before last, where we had spoke about blocking and so on and so forth, the alleyway in the back. And that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of zoning. It's all about getting that community input. It's all about, protecting the public, and I just don't think we should try to confuse the zoning and the licensure. That's two separate procedures meant to, I've always believed, to protect the public. So with that, Ms. Amobian, and then we'll go to...
Here's my thinking. Perhaps we should consider doing something that we do, which is similar to the continuum of care and how you oversee the residential licensed adult care facilities for group homes. I know we've dealt with this oversaturation problem with the group homes, at least we've tried to. But if we created something whereby, because the only real reason I think that we have a role, if you want to know where the locations are, to provide some public awareness so that people know who's providing these services and they might be interested in utilizing them, that could be one reason. The other one, as we heard from the couple, months ago, where the state is changing some of the requirements for the providers, that we could potentially have a serious deficit on our hands in terms of people being computer literate enough to manage all of the information that's necessary. So if we had like a group, I don't know if it needs to be a continuum of care, or if it's something just so that we are aware of the daycare providers, so that we could not only have the awareness, we can provide some assistance to them as we find out what their needs are in our community and make sure folks are aware of them. But in terms of inspections, regular reviews, infractions that may occur in the homes. All of those things are handled by the state. And if someone were to call you and tell you that they believe that a child is not being treated fairly, we would have a responsibility to notify Children's Services Board, and I'm sure they would go to the state. But the only role that we have in this is that. And I'm not really sure about the zoning problems that you're referencing, because the state has essentially said those that are providing services to 9 children can increase to 12. And we are asking people to pay a $100 permit fee to come down and to get that increase. And to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's costly, and it's a waste of their time to come down here and go through this process. I don't understand the role that we are playing. And we can talk about all the other things that happen to occur during the process, but that's not the role of this process. This process is to provide the conditional use, and we're not doing anything. We're not giving them a use, anything other than what they're already doing.
Okay. Thank you. Samples?
Thank you. I just want to rise in support of this daycare. I've been there to visit several times. I know Ms. McCall personally. We actually grew up together, and she's running a phenomenal daycare center over there. I was just more concerned, maybe just a question. I've never had an issue that has come up about any of my daycares, even when they go through this process, but I always get complaints from my residents about halfway houses. So we don't regulate halfway houses here at the City Council, and if not, why is that? Because I always get those calls.
5
They just
unrelated
pop up.
residents.
I never get them for daycares, never.
I can,
So, you see what I'm saying?
just, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm sure that there's some legal obviously in terms of our regulation, non-regulation, but our code does say that 5 unrelated folks can stay within a single-family residential house. So that's the one threshold, I think. Mr. Antonucci, I'm sure he knows more about this than I.
Well, that's basically it. So in a single-family home, you can have 5 unrelated people living together as a family. And I think when we get the calls, oftentimes it's people saying, well, there seems to be a lot of people at this house. I don't know who they are. And those are the kind of the calls that we get. But our zoning code defines family, and part of that definition of family includes 5 unrelated people. So in a single-family house, you know, that's permitted.
So on the daycare side, if I have a daycare center that, say they have overnights, is there a different process if they have overnight children? Or it would be the same process as this one?
It'd be the same process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so I guess another question would simply be that if we have a conditional use in place on a property, and then all of a sudden the neighbors in the neighborhood started complaining that they're having 13, 14, 15 children there, that there's parking problems, that there's pickup and drop-off problems, so on and so forth. Children are, you know, what have you, run the neighborhood or whatever. With this process in place, we would have a way to address that. Mr. Antonucci?
Yes, we would.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Mr. Neal, then Ms. Amobi.
I mean, I understand your concerns and others, but that we wouldn't know about that problem until after they would start adding the extra children. Just from a strictly business standpoint, and I think I heard this in our planning director's comments. When we look at just what it cost us to go through this process for each one, what is the actual cost to us as a city? When you have people handling all this paperwork, someone actually taking time, maybe in a city car to drive out there, inspect it, come back, is it the best use of our time if we can incorporate this in a streamline our process? Since we review these places every 3 years or whatever it is, just know so that we can be more cost efficient. That is my concern. Just from a business standpoint, I don't know if this is the best use of our time. And as you just stated, if these problems arise, then there is something within our normal process where they're going to come to us anyways. Even if we go through this process and we agree to them having 13 people, 12 children there, and there's a concern, it's still going to come before us. If not in a formal process like this, it will come before us during the open comment period. So it will come before us, or it will come to the council person. Mine is just from a business standpoint, seeing if we could be more efficient in streamlining our process, because $100, when you look at labor and time associated with it, one, for those businesses, I know they could do more with that $100, and for us as a city, I don't think that's the best use of our time, because I believe when you add up the man hours, it's more than $100.
Okay, Mrs. Movian?
You know, as a mental health provider for a number of years, and being very familiar with residential treatment facilities and residential group homes and adult care facilities and all of that, if we got a complaint about a group home, it would be the state that we would contact, and they would come and do an investigation. Once upon a time, before the law changed, it was a local county responsibility to do the inspections and to monitor. That role has changed. It is now the state's responsibility. And if they were to call someone at the city level, the city would end up calling the state to report the infraction or the concern that's expressed. And then they would do a full, thorough investigation to see what the problem is. Because part of the problem that we have, and I think we all know this, is that there's been a stigma as long as I can remember, and it's been more than 40 years that I've been in mental health, about folks living in group homes in the community. Folks don't want next door to them. It's okay in somebody else's neighborhood or next door to someone else, but when it comes to my neighborhood, I don't want these people living next door to me, even though they could be conforming to the rules and regulations of having 5 or under in their home. It's usually those kinds of complaints, but those things would roll up to the state. And they've already talked about the fact that they could have 12 at a time, children in their homes. They could have children leaving and some other kids coming, and people wouldn't know that still could be a total of 12 or 9 or whatever in that facility. That kids could be leaving while others are coming. So it's all that kind of thing. And basically, you would just do an investigation, just look into it. And as many of these folks have said, they've had no complaints, they've had no problems. And other folks have not heard about these concerns. So it's that kind of confusion that some people have. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, well, let's move on to the balance of the agenda, and we'll take time on 4, 5, 6, go on to 7, which is the ordinance approving the historic designation of the Astor Avenue Business District as a historic district. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Committee. An application has been received for designation of the Astor Avenue Business District as an Akron Historic District.
Turn your mic on.
An application has been received for designation of the Astor Avenue Business District as an Akron Historic District. The designation would include 10 buildings along the east side of Astor Avenue between Linden Avenue to the north and Palm Avenue to the south. Firestone Park is an important example of a planned community in the early 20th century. The neighborhood was planned and built by Harvey Firestone, the president of Firestone Tire and Rubber. Recognizing the need for housing for his workers, Firestone purchased land and hired landscape architect of his estate to design the layout of Firestone Park. Construction of the neighborhood began in 1915. The Astor Avenue Retail District grew along with the rest of the neighborhood. The historic retail landscape is essentially intact. Some of the buildings have been modified, but there are no gaps in the historic core of the retail area. These buildings are significant in their contributions to the local history of the Firestone Park neighborhood. The application for historic designation was prepared and submitted to the city by one of the business owners in the district, who's in attendance today, and all property owners within the district were notified of the proposed application for designation by certified mail. If designated as historic district, any activity affecting the exterior of included structures within the district will require a certificate of appropriateness from the City of Akron Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission. Before issuing the certificate, The commission will review the proposed activity for consistency with the Secretary of the Interior's standards for rehabilitation. Ordinary maintenance, repair of existing features, or replacement of flat roofs is exempted from needing a certificate. The designation also makes buildings eligible for historic tax credits. The Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission of the city approved designation at a public hearing on May 17th, and Akron Planning Commission on May 17th. The planning staff recommends approval of the proposed historic district.
Thanks. Thank you. Open up for questions or comments. Mr. Kamer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I'm in favor of this, and I want to thank the business owner, Tara Kuntz, that's here in attendance, for her hard work. She's been an asset for the Astor Avenue Reed Business District as a business owner and also a property owner, so I want to thank her and her dedication towards this. I want to thank the planning department for your hard work in regards to this application and actually going out there and taking photographs and doing your job. I appreciate it. It was well worth it. I do got a couple questions, though. I was reading through this. Does this address any type of future signage?
In terms of signage, if it's added to the exterior, yes.
Okay. And then also after, if this is passed by city council, does all the business owners or property owners get notified that this is moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Like I said, I appreciate the hard work, and I appreciate Tara, she's in the audience, and for her hard work, and I support this. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Amobian?
I just have a question. Do they get, are they entitled to any type of benefits, financial benefits, or are they the business providers in this district?
Well, right now, as it turns out, this is a great streets area in the city, so for the next 5 years, business owners in this area can apply for matching grant assistance for any exterior improvements. So we would work with them, you know, on a case-by-case basis as they
But
apply.
that's not necessarily tied to the historic designation?
No, no.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank you.
Segedy?
And if I could just add, and maybe even put in a plug for council to consider this. This has been a great process to work on. We appreciated working with Councilman Kamer and Tara and other business owners. And this is a little bit of a test case in the city to look at how we can leverage a historic district for, to your question, for maybe some financial incentives to develop in the area. So I think as we move forward, if other council members feel there's an area, you know, in their neighborhood, or especially in those great streets areas that Kurt mentioned, we would like to pilot and maybe try more of these types of districts in the future. So.
I'm ready. Okay, any further yes, Ms. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Does everyone in the business district have to agree before you apply, or can just a business owner apply or start the process without, or is there a percentage of folks that need to be in agreement?
Everybody's included. So for major exterior improvements, they will be, it kind of kicks in when they go to get a building permit. And just like it'll go through the zoning division, just like the conditional uses will, it's kind of the same thing when they do an exterior improvement.
No, I was speaking specifically to the historic designation. Does everyone in the business district have to agree with applying for the designation, or is there just a certain percentage?
They could come to this and not want to be included. That if, say, everybody in the district didn't want to be included, it would require more of a council vote in order to pass it, is how that would work.
So specifically for this one, so everybody in the business district, Astor, agreed that they wanted it designated as a historic district?
Yeah, we haven't received any objections from
And I would say that this actually
But there's no need for a formal agreement, you just
Right.
sent out the certified
And this went
letters.
through our Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission, and all the folks were notified of that. at a public hearing, and then there was a public hearing at Planning Commission as well. So there was quite
Ample
an
notices.
opportunity for
Okay.
folks to,
But there doesn't have to be a formal, I agree, it's just that you do the proper
It
notification.
really is council's designation, so.
I would like to ask Ms.
Thank you.
Tara Kuntz.
Hi, it's Tara Kuntz at 357 Reed. I just think you were asking about the application process, and anyone can apply. So I just had to follow the steps after I started the application process. So that's just up to one person.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Is there, Ms. Amobian?
Just curious, is there any kind of downside to this? It seems like it wouldn't be, it'd be more advantageous than a disadvantage.
Well, I mean, the trade-off is that there's more, the standards are more stringent now for the exterior architecture, but we still see that actually as an upside that, you know, as was mentioned, there will be a process to review any exterior modifications to the buildings, but we do like that because it preserves the integrity of the district. Sometimes in these older districts, if there aren't regulations like this in place, you know, the buildings start to become unrecognizable and kind of get disfigured. But there's always, like we were talking about on the previous item, there's always a yin and a yang and a balance between, you know, having enough regulation to have some standards, but not becoming so burdensome that it's not feasible for people to invest. So we feel like in this location, we struck that balance really well.
And the ones that I've been familiar with, you try to keep that architectural uniqueness in place, and that when you try to do something exteriorly, you can't, you know, make those kind of changes. So sometimes that is worth the designation, I think, because some of the architectural designs that were done before were absolutely beautiful, and to maintain a lot of that is great.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Is there a recommendation on this item? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. We'll make a favorable recommendation this evening at 7 o'clock to all council. Okay, on item number 8 is approving the donation of certain city-owned land to the state of Ohio to facilitate the completion of State Route 8 Bridge project. This is in essence land area that was given to the city by the state of Ohio. There's a project that's pending at this point, and so they're kind of asking for it back, I guess. And it's primarily right-of-way. And so is consent agenda okay on this, Mr. Moretz? Consent is okay? Very good. Is there any questions or comments? Is there a recommendation for consent? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Very good. Number 9 is approving the 2019 Consolidated Action Plan, including applications, certifications for the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. Ms. Tomic? Talked about this last week.
We did discuss it last week, and as of today, we have not received any inquiries from council regarding this item.
Okay, very good. Cool. Is there any questions or comments on this item? Very good. Is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules? I understand that the due date is Thursday or Friday of this week, so.
Friday, correct.
Friday. Is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules with a favorable report?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes
Is
have it.
this one I should abstain from?
Yes. I would, no?
It doesn't,
Ms. Tomic, do you have a comment?
This is not a continuum of care document, so,
okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Aye.
so it doesn't, okay,
Aye.
very good. Okay, very good. Okay, we voted, but Mr. Neal, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr.
Permit
Chair,
one question.
Yeah, just one comment. I would like for us, because this has something to do with rehab housing and the whole bit, I would like for us to have a discussion about our plan of action and how it's going to impact our communities at some further time, not to hold this up. But right now, we're leaving it in the hands and to those who do the work out in the community. But as far as council, I'd like for us to be able to have discussion so we can streamline. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against? The ayes have it. Very good. We have one Recommend time on the balance of the agenda short of any concerns or comments, and recommend that we move into the new list. Number 1, authorizing the Director of Planning and Urban Development to file an application and enter into agreement with the State of Ohio for the Homeless Crisis Response Program. Ms. Tomic.
Good afternoon, committee chair, committee members. On May 10th, 2019, the Ohio Development Services Agency released an application for the Homeless Crisis Response Program. The state of Ohio is allowing statewide appointed applicants, as the city of Akron as the COC lead is one of those agencies, to apply for funding for 2020 and 2021 homeless prevention funds. The application is due to the state of Ohio on June 26, 2019. The Homeless Crisis Response Program will provide financial assistance to households, individuals, and families who are homeless. Funds are available for rental assistance, security deposits and utility deposits, utility payments, and moving costs. Additionally, they can apply for and utilize funds for motel and hotel vouchers. This length of stay varies depending on individual needs. Typically, the average length of stay has been 160 days. Our partner, the United Way, verifies income on a monthly basis. So every month they approach the household to get their income certification, and if they qualify for assistance, that assistance is provided for an additional month until they no longer require that assistance. We have worked with United Way as our partner for the Rapid Rehousing Program. We are looking at approximately applying an application for $464,000, and this is a 2-year grant. This is probably the 4th time we've applied for this, 4th or 5th time, so we've been having this partnership and application process for about 10 years now. Mr. Joe Scalise from United Way is available to answer any questions, should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Mobian.
This is our 2nd year, though. These dollars would just flow through us and go straight to United Way. Is that the plan?
Exactly.
And this is our 2nd year doing that.
It's probably our 4th or 5th year. Previously,
With
it was
United
with Infoline, and then with the merger of Infoline and United Way, then our partnership is now with United Way.
Yeah, but directly with United Way is our 2nd year.
Correct.
Yes. Do we have a report from the previous year?
So, Mr. Scalise, I believe, can you answer questions from our, we're in the middle of our 2nd year, so it would be 2018 and 19.
Mr. Scalise.
Joe Scalise, 2708 Berkshire Circle in Akron, Ohio. Yes, usually the reporting comes with the end of the 2-year grant contract. I can tell you that currently with the Housing Crisis Response Program funds, in 2018's grant year, we were able to assist 90 families or 90 households with rapid rehousing assistance to move them from either shelter or outside in a Category 1 housing situation to housed in their own unit and self-sustaining in their own unit.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind if I continue, please.
Yes.
The program when it first started was called Housing and Rapid Rehousing. It was trying to keep people from becoming homeless and rapidly putting them...
Correct.
Yeah. And they just kind of changed the name of it, but it's essentially the same kind of program.
It is basically the same kind of program. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the state have moved away from the homeless prevention piece of it. Okay. They feel that the national models across the country and best practices are more successful with rapidly rehousing. So these funds are encouraging communities to apply for rapid rehousing, and they have phased out the homeless prevention piece of it in the past 2 years.
Thank you very much.
Further questions or comments? What's the due date again? I'm sorry, I was writing.
June 26th.
June 26th. Well, is there a recommend? Oh, Ms. Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do we contract with United Way and they subcontract with someone else, or who does that?
We contract with United Way, and they are a direct provider for these services. They're a direct provider, and then they have a relationship with landlords throughout the city and the county to house folks in the private setting.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Consent agenda okay?
Yes, please.
Motion for consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. Thank you. We're adjourned.